While ordinary minds feel that being part of the larger collective affords them protection, they fail to realize that it also makes them vulnerable to whatever ills may befall a herd. Question: why don't you ever see the more conscious on quiz shows? Reply: because the individual answers they possess apply to nothing the audience can see. The People's Highway. Looking at the messy pileup, the officer said, well, accidents do happen. And a bystander thought, no, life happens. Everything else is just the mind's commentary thereon. And the ossifer, being the blind, faithful servant of the state that he was startled. Looked around and cried out, who thought that? An uncredited reality behind all man's myths and fables. Originality is the actual creature that eats everybody up. One man told himself, you got to be fast to live around here. One man wrote a manuscript of many pages and was satisfied with it, but was surprised to discover that it was taking him more time to put the pages in an order that pleased him than it did to write them in the first place. If you immediately felt this applicable to a certain type of person's attempt to realize a new state of intellectual awareness, then you may well be such a person. Congratulations, good human, said enlightenment to a man. You now are one. Choosing just the right word can mean a lot, if words are all you've got. A boy asked his father, who first said that fate giveth and fate taketh away? And his father responded, now I've forgotten whether I told you I was a priest or a paving contractor. A boy said to his father, and what is a life well lived if not one lived exactly? Well, it could be one lived more consciously. And a boy said to his father, I don't get it. First I get it, then I don't. I just don't get it. Which, of course, to the more conscious is precise proof otherwise. Little things mean a lot. You mean like words? When it comes to size, one man asked himself, what's the difference between the inside of my mouth and the whole universe? They can both be as large as I want them to be. Either one, in fact, can completely fill up my mind. Another way to tell that you may be on the right track is when you start having as much fun at your upper end as you do your lower. For those in our audience still particularly nervous about it, you can take it to say, nearly as much fun. Some people are touchy about it. And now from our popular brochure describing how ordinary men live life in the mental lane, we take this definition: death, the ultimate conservation of energy. Ask not, dear viewer, for whom the literal tolls. You know damn well it's tolling for you. Those quietly nursing their drinks at the stupid bar were jolted from their reverie by a loud voice behind them that declared, stand aside and see how a real man does it. After many grueling hours at their respective blackboards, the two professors finished their work at the very same moment, reaching the exact same conclusion. And as they looked at each other's answer, and then approvingly at one another, one said, proof again that great minds dress alike. The man wrote the smart doctor, dear doctor, what is the difference between thinking and consciousness? And the doctor wrote back, do you mean to actually ask what is the difference between thinking and being more conscious? And the guy wrote back, yeah. So the doctor then replied, had you been more conscious to begin with, you'd have thought to say that the first time. And the man wrote back, you sure are a smart ass. And the doctor wrote back, hey, that is half my name. And the guy decided not to waste any more postage. A boy said to his father, "What's the use in having two brains in your brain if you can't have a little fun out of it?" And his uncle, who also served as his right kidney, mused, "It's sad that more families don't engage in meaningful dialogue like this." The sign outside the courthouse announced, "Trial of the century." And when he went in, they arrested him. Second version. Second version. The sign outside the courthouse announced, "Trial of the century." And when he went in, they arrested him. And being mystically inclined, he was sorely pleased in that he now had even more from which to escape. Third version? Believe me, you don't want to hear the third version. How to know you belong in a crowd. You look at the crowd you're in and think, "God, I'm glad to be here." One day, one man opened his dictionary and thought, "There are far too many words in here." One day, a letter looked at the words of which he was a part and wondered, "Do sentences think about words the same way as words probably do about me? And what do thoughts think about all of us?" Not to worry, little letter. Most men's thoughts don't think about anything. Would you repeat that first part again? Certainly. You can tell you belong in a crowd when you look around at the crowd you're in and think, "God, it's good to be here." There are two kinds of mystical schools, those that tell you how to act and the ones you can't locate, the real ones. Maps, maps, get your maps here. Maps to the homes of the stars. Are any included therein still alive? Certainly not. Then give me a couple. Maps, maps, get them while they're hot and dead. Maps. Yeah. A history and hierarchy of city belief structures. Men believe in fate when they tire of believing in nature. Men believe in gods when they tire of believing in fate. Then men believe in art when they tire of believing in gods. And then men believe in science when they tire of believing in art. And then those who know don't believe in nothing. Well, maybe except fate. As he gleefully shredded all the known blueprints, the young architect sang to himself, "Destroy me, Daddy, 8 to the bar." And those quietly nursing their drinks at the stupid bar, oh, we've done that one already. Memories, a pastime for those lacking originality. Ergoli, was a man moved to correspond to the doctor. Dear doctor, just what does constitute a harmless pastime? Dear man moved, does the word life ring a bell with you? Today's metaphysical news. Some believe that we'll finally come down to a terrifying apocalyptic battle between two mighty forces. Or maybe not. The news is a tricky thing. A voice in the crowd cried out, "A man's mind is not something to play around with." And in return, someone shouted, "Who said that?" And the voice in the crowd yelled back, "Well, I did, but local conditions made me do it." And conditions gave him a sharp elbow in the ribs and muttered, "Don't tell him that." The sorrier the mush, the more will the cook defend with your life his right to excuse it. The operator told those on the elevator, "There are different levels of consciousness, and you're not on one." The comparison compared again. Literal thinking, a running mental commentary on reality. Metaphorical thinking, a personal running translation of the literal. Symbolic thinking, a whole new commentary. On his business card, just below the name of his particular enterprise, it read, "You've tried the rest, now try a cliche." And now another reading from our Mystic's Guide to the World of Drugs. Tonight's excerpt entitled, "Dealer's Delight." Once they're addicted, You can badmouth addiction. The teacher announced, today, class, instead of apples and oranges, we're going to compare sex and consciousness. Specifically, sex vis-a-vis the two genders and consciousness vis-a-vis its own dual aspects. To wit, sex to men is an irresistible urge, while comparably to women is an irreplaceable tool. And consciousness to routine mental operations is a wholly overlooked affair, while consciousness to a mystic is the irresistible doorway to even greater consciousness. And a young boy in the back of the alleged name of boy said, I don't understand. And the teacher just softly and dangerously laughed, noting, that's all right, boy. Just wait till you're older and given over to even more routine mental operations, then you'll understand even less. Yeah. Just outside Paris was a man who once waited on a train. He was a patient man. He waited for a long time. A really long time. He, in fact, waited as long as he lived. Too long. For on some journeys, patience is synonymous with stupidity. How easily things can be confused if you're a human. One man would sometimes mistake the pains of his stomach cancer for having a bad head day. Time and the creative spirit. Short and sweet, long and pathetic. Interested in a self-portrait, local conditions ask an artist, what do you charge? And the painter replied, that depends. Do you want to pay by the pound, by the hour, or by my ability to make you appear to be whatever I want you to be? The use of time and originality, short and sweet, long and pathetic. One way you might spot the more conscious among you, is that even though they may appear to listen to the ideas of others, they don't, really. When one man had the simplicity of reality finally explained to him, he shook his head and said, God damn, no wonder it's so complicated. Question, why don't you ever see the enlightened in positions of spiritual leadership? And the first person to respond said, would not the query have been better framed had it said, in public positions of spiritual leadership? And although that was not the answer listed as correct on the quiz master's cards, he was nonetheless impressed that anyone even responded. After many years of suffering and silence over the matter, one man finally said to his mind, that noise you make is driving me absolutely insane. And his mind said, you mean the way I suck on my teeth? Hell no, the man replied, the way you friggin' think. Which, as you might imagine, came as quite a blow to his mental self. One day a guy looked in his intellectual refrigerator and says, oh, I see you keep kosher. And replied, no, I just don't have anything to eat. Question, if originality is the answer, what is the question? Well, problem is that those with no originality can't even comprehend the question. No, I can't read it over. And a man in a nice city suit interrupted. You call that a problem? Just look at my nice city suit. Now there's a problem. The sign out front downtown proclaimed, mental haberdasher to the stars. But turns out they only sell saddles, degrees, and other paraphernalia for riding cows. What's the difference between a real thinker and those who just think they are? A real thinker can think anything he wants to. For the sake of your personal relationships, please do not pull this on your family or friends. A man tried to fool a mystic, but after some time seemed to either reconsider or suspect something was wrong. And went to the mystic and said, you saw through me all the time. To which the mystic replied, I did. And the man said, why certainly. So the mystic said, why certainly. And the man went away happy. A couple of just guys decided to play their own little quiz game. And the first one said, "What might the more conscious be missing?" And the second one replied, "Brute force?" And the first one said, "Yeah, but would they miss it much?" And the second one replied, "Brute force?" Some things should obviously be left to professionals. A father asked his son, "Why are men's educational institutions of such gigantic size and staff?" And the lad replied, "So that by the large numbers involved, the chances increase at least somebody may actually know something." And his old man, being yours as well, chuckled, "You crack me up, boy." Oh, I think this one might lend itself to some theatrics. Looking out upon the normal everyday affairs in man's mental city life, one fellow thereon thought, "I can either laugh at it or become critical of it. Damn, wish there was somebody I could write to about such things." What do you think? Should we tell him that there is? Yeah. Today's health tip: how to go deaf. Listen to others. One of the ultimate crucibles of acid. What is the one thing in the world that there is no such thing as? The make-believe awakened. "But wait, objecteth thee, that can't be so. Why, I've seen such for myself." "Ah! But can you be certain it was not a mirror that you saw?" A certain dead man with litmus stains on his vest said, "I just adore a good test, don't you?" If you feel that in ways non-physical you can be disrespected, what further proof needeth thee of thy staggering simplicity? There is a strange type of justice afoot on some campuses, such that, to the same degree that you find others dumb, your own intelligence is limited. And many of those ambling about began muttering testily, "You call that fair?" Mutter, mutter, mutter. A mystic sitting at the counter raised his cup again and said, "I can drink them as fast as you can make them." Then finally, it was time for our own private little quiz, the one just between you and me. The question: why did you get on the train in the first place if you didn't plan to ride it to the end? And to expedite matters, I answered on your collective behalf by lowering my eyes, shuffling my feet, and saying, "Oh, well, you know." A man said to his consciousness, "Boy, have I got a great surprise for you." And it clamored, "Wow, what is it? What is it?" And the man said, "Well, I'm not going to tell you. You just tell him." Yeah. Istanbul. What a sight to see. Tonight's non-scripted part will be entitled Didn't you say that graphics always came in handy? From literal thinking to metaphorical to symbolic and beyond. And how about another version? Are you getting all this on the... How about a different graphic version of what we were doing last time? If this is a screen of man's intellectual perception, his awareness, his consciousness of life, and we're all born down here on the floor of the theater. This is supposed to be a theater. And we have little folksies. We're all born here, and you're in your theater seat. And there you are, looking at the screen. The consciousness, the perception of life. But then, that would be literal thinking. Then how about we have this balcony, and then we have a man engaged in metaphorical thinking, wherein from this position he can see his literal thinking and, obviously, what it's seeing also. And then up to the symbolic level, wherein, obviously, if you see, it can take it all in. Symbolic thinking is so far beyond anything that's ordinarily done that in truth it can only be called original. Because metaphorical thinking is tied to a running commentary, a running translation of the literal commentary that consciousness does of life. The comparison tonight that was in the papers was literal thinking, a intellectual commentary on reality. It can be talked about in all sorts of ways, but that's all it amounts to. What does man's mind do? What purpose does the intellect do for man? What purposes are served with having an intellect? Withal, if he had none, what would he have lost? Now, obviously, you can say after a certain point we would have lost what is now the technological assistance we have that only come about through the mind, but insofar as surviving, insofar as being a viable creature, you ask what is actually lost to the individual. And what is lost is the running commentary on reality. And not any philosophical discussion of what is reality, and because then you fall in, if you're going to fall into the hands of that kind of academic stream, then you're always left with the final general statement, the final general conclusion, that you can't really identify reality unless you're going to just say, well, everyone's concept of reality varies slightly, which is only to say, in a non-specific, non-useful manner, what I've just described to you, that the intellect, literal thinking, is a running commentary on reality. And if you begin to think about it that way, if you care to pursue it, you don't have to then get into the idea of what is reality, which is all down here on the first floor, down on the ground level. That's where philosophers stay. That's where all, as I point out, that's where the vast, 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 vast majority of all people's intellect resides. We're all born there, and damn few people's intellect ever rises any higher than that, their consciousness. By intellect, we're not talking about education, obviously. So, if you take the description that literal thinking, the basic operations of the human intellect, is a running commentary on reality, then you're no longer, if you ever were, but you're no longer subject to the captious hold then of getting off the sidetrack of, well, what is reality? At the literal level, that whole notion about reality, does reality actually exist out there? Or is it just our concept? And that gets into what appears to be to ordinary minds even a bit more complex matters, such as, someone plays an oboe in the woods alone, does it make a sound? However, is all the basis. Well, the thing is, there's a tree falling. No one there. Obviously, the one most of you have heard of. And the thing is, it is another, but in this sense, since it's attributed to Zen schools, mystical schools, it is given a patina of additional importance in that you're asking some sort of metaphysical question. But you're still dealing with the question that seems to plague the dualistic mind. That is anything going on out here, what I perceive, is that actually real in and of itself, or is it, and in some way, am I neurotic, am I psychotic, am I mistaking having indigestion for being it all, at that level, as it should, falls by the wayside once you realize that the question of, quote, reality is, take your choice, it's all the way from moot to meaningless. And for those of you, if you don't like that, it's all the way from impertinent to moot. It is a running commentary. That is the intellect. That is the basis operations of everyone's mind is a running commentary on reality. And after that, there's nothing useful to be said. It is only ordinary people down on the floor that will get involved, such as psychiatrists, ordinary people, psychologists, sociologists, historians, your family, your minister, your priest, your rabbi. It's irrelevant. It is the running commentary on reality. And whatever reality is beside the point. Or if you want to try it, I say beside the point, if you'd like one, there's reality. Because there is life showing it. But the consciousness, the intellectual awareness to begin with, is an individual's running commentary on that. And so whatever's going on the screen is irrelevant. It's meaningless. It cannot be described. One man turns the seat to somebody else at that level and says, "Did you see what just happened?" The guy said, "Sure." And they begin to discuss it, and suddenly they both think, "Well, you didn't see it," about the other one. Then I described in the one tonight metaphorical thinking, you can look at as being the next, albeit non-lineal level, even though I've drawn it otherwise, allegorically. Metaphorical thinking is a personal. See, now this is the first time, if you'll take my descriptions as an operational basis, this is the first time that the idea of any individuality shows up, because down here, everyone, you physically are individual, obviously, but the belief that in some way that you are engaged in a personal perception of reality is the grandest of illusions. It is being part of the collective. There's nothing wrong. But the opening one tonight, maybe it'll make a little more sense now. While ordinary minds feel that being part of the larger collective affords them protection, and it does. It affords you sanity, for one thing. It affords you feeling comfortable. If you're sitting there in your seat and watching life, and you do feel like, well, something went by that almost didn't make sense. Was that a flying saucer? Was that somebody with 3 arms that just went by? And you can turn to those around you. Assume you're sitting in a reasonably sane middle of the theater. You turn to somebody around you and go, was that somebody with 3 arms? And the collective, it's like the herd that you're staying there. If you're a cow, and it's like you can physically stay out of danger. Now take it symbolically, allegorically into the mental. As long as you're staying there, it's as though you're protected. You're a face in the crowd. You're a mind in the crowd. You're a cow in the crowd. And it's like anytime you feel sort of like I don't know what to do next, you don't have to know what to do next. The herd moves. A bird doesn't have to decide, which way should I turn next? Hundreds of them flying along, and suddenly they all go. I like zoologists and birdologists trying to ponder, what do we make of that? That is a group of birdologists that they're meeting somewhere at a conference, and they're all staying there, and they go, is that problem going to plague us forever that nobody can come up with? How it is these birds flying in close formation? I mean, make graduates of the Air Force Academy drool. And there they are flying wingtip to wingtip, hundreds of them, as fast as they can go, and suddenly they all go, broop, broop. They never bump in, never. Nobody's ever seen one bird bump into another, or one turn the wrong way. But now wait, now listen, this is quick, because I can't sell it. And here we go down to a birdologist convention, and that subject comes up again. And they're just standing there talking. It's on break time. They're all having a little coffee and stuff. And here's 8 or 10 of them staying there. And they go, well, are we ever going to answer that problem? And all 8 or 10 of them pick up their coffee and go, it's just beyond us. And they all go, it is. I think we'll stop there. I wasn't sure that... Well, I was going to read again. While ordinary minds feel that being part of the larger collective affords them protection, which it does. That's how you know you're sane. That's how you know you're you. But it's mainly, ordinary people would probably accept sanity. Because mentally, if you're ordinary, there is the danger. You don't have to feel as though you're a subject or in need of psychiatric help. But all sane people, again, I point out to you that is one of the benchmarks of sanity amongst the civilized and the sophisticated, is to say, are you totally sane? And that's one way nowadays, well, it always has been, but nowadays I use up-to-date terminology in situations for a person to say, well, sure, I guess I'm sane, but we're not, none of us are absolutely sane, because I've been in analysis for 20 years. Or maybe a better example is, I assume all of you know that any decent, God-fearing, psychiatrist stays in analysis more or less all of his life. That's their claim anyway. That's a sign that you are sane, is that you will, it's a variation from last time, those of you that got something out of being humble. They're showing how intelligent you are by saying, well, I don't know that much. Some of you liked it, but I bet you've forgotten over it by now. And I said, isn't that something? That you admit you're stupid and it makes you feel better. And then I ask you the rhetorical, if not musical question, what does that say? I mean, if you feel better by admitting you're stupid, what more proof do you want that you are stupid? Nah? I'm not completely sane, and it's a sign that you're sane. Well, I got problems. Anyway, to ordinary people, the more civilized and sophisticated they are in our day and time, the more they want the protection of the herd. While ordinary minds feel that being part of the larger collective affords them protection, which is if you stay down on the floor, if you never try and struggle out of literal thinking, and you were born genetically fairly sound, etc., and you're just an ordinary person who I always assume that that's all I am addressing, here and elsewhere, out on the airwaves, then you're there amongst the sane. You're in the middle of the herd down there on the floor. That is sanity, and it feels comfortable. And most people, most people have no idea, no notion, no interest in moving therefrom. About the most they'll do is read science fiction or read fiction and get just a little tingle like, ooh, wouldn't that be something? And they get, some of them I used to get a little out of religion and religious myths, mythology in general, about things that are not literally true, and they go, ooh, just kind of a small tingle. But if you jump in with ordinary people, as all of you should know by now, down there on the floor, nice, sane people, your family and friends, and you see them tingle when a little myth went by. Maybe a science fiction movie or something goes by on the screen, and you kind of tingle, and you go, hey, do you realize that, you know it didn't really happen, not yet, kind of science fiction. They go, yeah. But I noticed you kind of tingled, and you go, well, yeah, it was nice to think about. I mean, if that could be true. And you said, wait a minute, what if that is a myth? That's man's dreams of the future through the nervous system. But you could actually do it if you look at that as a myth and not actually flying saucers, not people going to other planets, or if you took religious things. It's not actually a prophet dying and then coming back to life because he was supernatural. What if that was something else? By then, even your family and friends, as all of you should know by now, they begin to get a little fidgety. They wish you would stop it. They'll go back to eating their popcorn. They'll tune you out. Nobody wants to hear that. Because if they even do listen for a minute, they begin to feel like, well, I'm losing it. Wait a minute. It's just a movie. It was just a story. I mean, we can't do that. Or if they deny it was just a story, they say, wait a minute, that was godlike, or that was supernatural. That's the work of the... Hey, get away from me with that. That is from one view, the greatest benefit to ordinary people to staying down there is you feel sane. But you only do it by being down there on the floor. It is being part of a collective. It doesn't matter what. The collective, you may be sitting in the Italian Catholic section. You may be sitting in the Polish Jewish section. You may be sitting in the Pakistani Islamic section. And I'm just making up obvious things. And you feel that you're sane. You look around, and if there's any translation, because down on the floor, nobody knows what the hell is going on. That's why they all group together. That was the boy who was asked by his father, why are men's educational institutions in the city that is ordinary with, why are they so large and have such a great staff? And you remember what he said. Cracked the old man up, because he answered it. The more people you got there, of course, he was being funny. He said, well, the more people you got involved at that level, the greater the odds that somebody's going to know what they're talking about or know something. Of course, the old man knew it was being funny. You understand? It's not that anybody down there is going to know, but it's that sensation that if you're in a crowd down there and you look around, it is a fellow psychologist, let's say. And something on the screen goes by or behind you, hear somebody go, psychologists don't know nothing. And now you sit and you look around, you're a fellow psychologist, and you can all look at each other and kind of smug or look around and see who said it. Anyway, they're there. And you feel sane. Why? Go back to a cow. You can feel like I'm crippled. I may fall down. But as long as you stay in the middle of the herd where you belong, they'll prop you up. Any psychiatrist watching this, you can have that description. No royalties involved.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to guess how many will write and thank me for it? Being sane is like being a crippled cow held up by the herd. That is sanity. Well, now you can say it doesn't make sense, but take the opposite approach, and it does make sense. If you could make literal-minded people do that, then I'd have to say, wait a minute, that's true. I couldn't swallow it the first way around, that being sane is simply being a crippled cow in the midst of the herd so that you don't fall down. No, I can't take that. And if I say, I reverse it, what would be insane? Then if they were temporarily maybe overcome by too much butter on their popcorn, they might go, wait a minute, that's true. But of course, they would surely snap back at them and go, oh, no, it's not. While ordinary minds feel that being part of the larger collective affords them protection, they fail to realize it also makes them vulnerable to whatever ills may befall a herd. The ills befalling a herd, all right, I'm going to tell you the worst. Down there at the literal level where the herd and the collective operates, the ills befalling a herd, were you waiting for me to say something like semi-terminal mumps, Gruber's syndrome? Sanity. Collective thought. Of course, now we're raising the stakes and we're not talking about ordinary people. But what you're vulnerable then from a view of trying to do something individual, something out of the ordinary with your own understanding is, the ill that befalls the herd is simply that. The sanity that it affords. Of being collective and realizing, well, I can't be that far afield. I can't be wrong. Because most of the people I'm around, most of life, believe so-and-so. And people, the ordinary mind will avail itself of such comfort even when it has no direct participation in the area in which they're finding some relief. That is, people who claim not to be religious, people who are actively not religious, if really pushed, and things, they get unsettled in their mind and feel like they're kind of stumbling, and if they were questioned or somebody bring it up, they at least feel as though being surrounded by people who believe a certain thing. If you were in the midst of the Western Judaic Christian culture, if that was the area where you were sitting, even if you were individually did not practice a religion, at times of some great stress, a death in a family, or you felt like you were dying or something, anyway, you feel somewhat discombobulated, somewhat disoriented, there's a kind of comfort. You look around, and I'm just going to make this up because the mind does not work necessarily this pictorially, but it's like you just find out you may be dying, or you're on the way to the doctor, and you've been coughing up blood, or you don't, that kind of thing, and you feel, and you start passing church after church. And it's kind of a thing, you're on the way to the doctor, and you feel, I could be dying here at an untimely age. But then you could be feeling like, it's not just, this can't be real. It's almost like some kind of spooky, I'm going in the twilight zone. But you look out, and it's like every corner is a big fine church, and there's hundreds of people. You see them coming in and out, and it's like a feeling that, wait a minute, things can't be that bad. Even if you're not religious, you understand. But it's like there's a certain kind of stability, there's a certain kind of predictability, there's a certain kind of collective justice to life, a certain kind of fairness that this can't be happening to me. It gives a kind of comfort. You follow? Surely do. Make it crude. Atheists are even comforted by knowing that everybody else is religious at certain times. The poor is comforted to know that there are rich people. They can say, well, I don't like the rich. Boy, I wish I was rich. Or you can say, I hate them. The same way an atheist could say, well, religious people are idiots or fools. But at certain times, they can be specifically, well, you should have heard me, that everyone's comforted if they're just relatively sane, relatively ordinary. They're comforted by the kinds of collective belief of which they're in the middle of, or which they are a part, at least passively, even if they do not actively participate in the areas that can give them comfort. That's why sane people, it's easier for me to use it in a way that sounds like an attack, without, while always hoping, assuming that you understand it's not a criticism. No matter what they say, ordinary minds, and you don't have to look at somebody else, look at your own, because you're sitting down there, part of you has no interest in anything resembling individual thinking. None. Now, I can say it can. And I can tell you that in advance, and you know that. You could tell a group of relatively sophisticated, ordinary people, you say, build it up some little way, and just say, I'm going to tell you a fact. I bet you've never thought about it. I look out in this audience, remember I'm playing a part now with some imaginary, let's say we're speaking at just the Arts Council somewhere, and you go, I look around, I know that some of you, I bet some of you are attorneys, yes, doctors, yes, psychiatrists, yes, artists, painters, yeah. All right, I will tell you something. I don't know why humanity got this misled. Do you realize that none of you have the least bit of interest in ever being original or having any kind of independent thinking? And they would laugh you off the stage. I mean, they would probably get up and leave. They might say, would you repeat that? And if you said it and they thought you were serious, they would take you for an idiot, as they should. So I understand that. People will insist otherwise. But you should be able to feel it. They do not. Nobody wants to be staying out there alone, away from the herd. Now, they don't know how to describe it, and I'm not trying to make it sound like some mock heroics, that mystics are those who will go out and stand alone. They do, but it's not to be heroic. Because once you can do it, you go out and stand so far alone that nobody even knows you are. Because every time they turn around, if it's necessary, you apparently are back in the herd. Which is not a strained allegory, because as I've pointed out to you, even if you get to the highest, in my description, you don't leave down there. You're always down there when necessary. You're always aware of down there, and if it's necessary that suddenly somebody says, well, blah, 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 and they talk to you in just literal, crude, floor-level terms, and for whatever reason that you got to do it, you got to answer, you need to answer it, whatever, you go, oh yeah. Hey, when you're ordinary, you can pass for ordinary. For those of you that like last time, Agva News, anybody even know the American Guild of Variety Acts? And it was backstage, and Life asked one guy, or Local Conditions asked a guy. That was the Agva News. I was afraid nobody. And it said, hey, look, even if you don't agree with what's going on, at least pretend you do. And the guy went, I don't do imitations. No. I mean, he could have been a tap dancer, or a comedian, but hey, I don't do imitation. From a expanded view, what I was getting at was the ills that can befall, that do befall a herd, are the very things that to the ordinary would seem to be a boon, which again is how things that appear to be a boon can be a bust. Because the ills that I referred to in that can befall a herd, or that will befall a herd, are the very things that those involved with the herd who cannot analyze it, is what attracts them to it, or why they feel comfortable. Because nobody wants to be out by themselves. It is not at the bio-survival level, it is not part of the mammalian territorial instinct to be alone. It is not. You people, if we were back to being animals, we are not lions. We are not leopards. We are wolves. We are cows. We are sheep. We are domesticated. We are group-oriented. Nobody wants to be alone. People know that at the crudest physical level, that everyone correctly, ordinary people, suspect that something is grossly wrong with a hermit, with a recluse. And I don't mean somebody that's, in ordinary parlance, is some sort of walking around homeless, psychotic, mumbling to himself. I'm talking about people that by some appearances appear to be relatively sane, intelligent, that suddenly say, I've had it with civilization. They go move out and somewhere weird like Teaneck or Butte, Montana, and live off by themselves and refuse to even get a satellite dish. Ordinary people realize something is not right about that, because that is physically, that is down to the physical level, it is absolutely unnatural for man. Life is big enough that it can stand a whole handful of hermits. You know that. Life can tolerate anybody. At the intellectual level, man has absolutely no perception of this. He will discuss it, and if I brought it up the way I said it, that I could, they would even just deny, they would hear the sentence. But when it comes to intellectual, people have no perception of this. As always, they come close enough that there are certainly papers written, reputation been made, and probably people has got their doctoral degree on the basis of mass hallucinations, the mentality of crowds, mob thinking. Oh, that's an old story. And them saying, well, yeah, we're interested in such as that. We know it exists. We know that crowds of people can get carried away by some kind of mass hysteria or some kind of mass emotion just on the moment and string up an innocent man. And it can just happen in a matter of minutes, or they can expand it, I'm sure, and they'll say, but we've also done historical surveys of how whole nations seem to go mad and will attack their fellow man and just go insane for 20 or 30 years. And they'll go, well, yeah, we know about that. No, they don't. Because the person that just told me that and said, well, in fact, I've written a history on that. And I said, well, you ever thought about how it applies to you? You understand what I'm getting at? If I was so dumb to do that, the man, intelligent, a leading historian, or leading 2 degrees in psychology and history, that he does psychological interpretations of history. He's saying, hey, we do think about such things. I, in fact, am one of the country's leading experts, if I may say so. And I have studied, I've written extensively on the matter of kinds of mass hysteria and people who seem to ordinarily be decent citizens and good burghers suddenly get carried away. Something happens, some political party takes over, some historical leader gets in charge, and the whole country seems to go mad. Oh, I've written on that extensively. And I go, yeah, okay. You ever thought how that applies to you? You understand? And a man would go, what are you, crazy? I'm not part of any kind of mass movement. I don't even belong to a political party. And as a matter of fact, after being an expert in reading and studying this, I keep my distance. You understand? I can't, if I was attempting to arm wrestle a man intellectually, he's not even going to play. His arm's going to turn into spaghetti. I'm not going to get him down. He's just going to slither away because he can't even conceive of it. But he is an active, good, card-carrying member of a stable herd, a community. The herd, in this case, being the academic herd of history, of whatever college where he is, or whatever field of intellectual endeavors in which he's made his reputation. You understand? He is sane. And it would be insane on his part if I said, you realize that anything resembling individual thought is just abhorrent. It is just frightening to people. To you, I'm talking to, sir. There you are trying to arm wrestle a man, and suddenly you don't have an arm, you got an eel. Because they can't play. Back to literal thinking is the herd. And I don't mean it just as some pejorative statement. It is sanity. There's nothing wrong. If I could change it, and if you knew what you were doing, if you could change it, you would not. It's just ridiculous. It is the sanity of ordinary humanity. It is the heart of the parade of progress. It is your, again, assuming since genes do not lie, I'm assuming that such literal-minded, sane, stable people are your mothers and fathers and your brothers and sisters, the general line of your genetic branch of the human family tree. It is literal. It is safe. And people do not have an active desire to escape therefrom. I'm telling you, we're talking about way over 99% of humanity sits there. And it's like people, if you want to put it this way, I've already admitted, it's like people almost seem to wander sometimes or dream of the next level. But it amounts to nothing. It is not a controlled ability that people have. It is only through their ability to almost dream of a next balcony is the only way that even after the fact that something can be referred to then. Some work of fiction, some drama, some painting, some statue. That can, after the fact, that is, whoever did it is gone. That they can say that, wait, this is not simply a painting. This is not simply a novel about an old woman and her little children and wolves and shoes and big fishes and Indians with no shoes. This is a metaphorical message. This is a mythical message, not to be taken just literally. And people can go, they can almost smell it. They go, oh, But humanity is not involved in writing those. So you've got way over 99% of humanity are sitting there. They are sane. They do not want to leave. That's why I was trying to infer that even if you catch people, and some of you have already been through this, or probably all of you, that somebody that you thought you knew, and the more you begin to understand that every now and then the situation will come up. Maybe you're at a movie with them, or they bring up a book they've read. And you go, yeah, I read that. Or they describe it to you, and you go, well, yeah, that sounds interesting. But if you ever thought just what you described, or let's say you read the same novel, and you go, but you realize instead of that just being some sort of love story, you could look at that as being, and they're still listening, you could look at that as being almost a metaphorical telling of a man's relationship internally to his own thinking that he just seems to be born with. And here's your good friend. And his eyes begin to glaze. And he goes, it's like almost a metaphorical telling of a kind of relationship of a man's, the hunger we used to have back when we were in college, and we always thought we'd go join up with an Indian guru or find some cult in Tibet. And his eyes really glaze because now he's 35 years old. And you go, but yeah, wait, don't drift off. This story itself, instead of just a cheap piece of fiction or an ordinary, that could almost be seen as a metaphor for that kind of struggle, that kind of search that we want to embark on back then. As I said, I'm sure all of you have been through that by now. People will show some interest. They will even talk about it unless they in some way stumble across somebody that could really talk about it, that really wants to push it. That is, this could actually be meaningful. This could amount to more than just a passing whim or just 90 minutes pleasurably spent watching a science fiction movie, and then maybe another 30 minutes of a handful of you drinking coffee and kind of talking about it. And even if you were listening to these people, it might sound like, with Jesus, they're almost mystical. Some of them even have some insight that they're looking at the kinds of things about space travel or other creatures, and you're just sitting in the booth behind them, and it sounds like that some of them are even, you think, God, I need to talk to those people, or they need to talk to me. They almost have the ability to think metaphorically. Yeah, right. Just lean over and say, pardon me, I couldn't help overhearing you. It won't take but a short minute. Well, you got your combination. It's the eyes glaze over, or they begin to punch each other like, let's get away from this guy. Literal thinking. A running mental commentary on reality. That's it. I don't know that I even want to condense that sentence myself, since it's my own. That is human consciousness at the operational, minimal, well-known, sane, everyday, rational, mundane, routine level. That's it. Popes, presidents, poets. Your mother, your father, you. That is what the intellect, that is what consciousness is at the bare minimal level, which, got to remember this, is 99% of the human level. It is a mental running commentary on reality, period. There's nothing else to be said. There's nothing personal in it. There's nothing personal in the literal running commentary, mental commentary on reality. There's nothing any more personal or individualistic in that than there is the screen. Or, put it this way, the world into which you are born. And you can't even try and pass yourself off for being sane if you think that the world in which you were born is in some way, that the gods and everything got arranged just right, like children doing a nursery for the upcoming baby, and go, well, is little Freddie going to like it? Is Mary going, is she going, I'm talking about an individual person, you, that if you're going to believe, well, wait a minute, just before I was born, just before the gods went, okay, send him in, that they all went, wait a minute, wait, hold it. You think he likes, is blue? Do you think he'll really like blue? Well, he like this little bed over here. Well, he like the women or men we got ready for him. How about the professions? How about his size? Is he going to like having brown hair? You got to be an idiot, right? There is as much personal and individualistic at the literal thinking level as that. Read, nuno. Nada. There is none. The metaphorical level is now we're the first time, there's no way out of this. I'm giving you very good, untenable, don't pass them around, final, ultimate psychiatric or psychological descriptions of the psyche of man. It is only at the next level that anything resembling individuality comes about. Which I point out again, ordinary people could take that part because I point out you, people who believe, which is very common, that they do want to be individualistic. Which amongst a group of sane people, they will insist they do. As I said, if you said, hey, I've decided all you people, you're not individuals. You could have an artist convention, creative writing class. There'd be the awards. If they give out awards for the creative writers, the fiction awards, the Pulitzer Prize and stuff, and you got the greatest writers, the greatest thinkers, artists, creative talent on this planet, and you got them all in the room, and you went, you people got no idea what originality is. You don't even have any interest in it. They wouldn't even bother to boo you. They just get them leave. Jesus. Because it's insane. But those people, the only way that they can show their individuality is through behavior, through appearance. which we've been through that. That is why it's such a waste of time that rebels that can be seen as rebels, that you look around, it's obvious they are. There's no such thing. We're back to, don't mix up two metaphors in the middle of one Indian shoe store. Cliches passing for knowledge, being part of the current fashion, passing for being individually hip. You ever forgot that one? Cliches passing for wisdom, individual wisdom, the use thereof, and whatever the latest hairdo is, the latest fashion, you check it out, and you be sure and get just like that, so that when you show up, people realize that you are an individual. Don't look for Captain Irony to fly in. You are Captain Irony. By the way, anybody that doesn't understand, Captain Irony, I wouldn't go, but he lives, he hangs out kind of down in here. Because you got to remember what irony is. It's ordinary people who are down here, he's still on that level, continually going, wait a minute, that isn't what I expected. That is, you understand, if they're not any more specific, the tacit, they're pointing out there like, well, something's wrong. That's not what I expected. Is anybody listening to the sentence? That's not what I expected. How dare local conditions do this? How dare things not work out? That's not what I expected. That's ironic. Well, all right, if you like irony better than stupidity. Well, we're out of time again. The metaphorical is the first stage, is the closest thing to anyone ever being individualistic, to being creative. Because for the first time you are now, use my own descriptions. Literal thinking is a mental running commentary on reality. Metaphorical thinking is an individual running translation thereof, or running adjustment. I was going to give you both, but it's your own running then adjustment. But remember the adjustment I already described. I'm quitting. It is not that you're trying to get down there and fool with that. You can't. You're not trying to change that. That's still just going on. But now, even though it's going on, and you see, that's what this one, you see what he's seeing. You see what your literal mind's doing because you're still sane. You're still amongst the sane. You're still amongst the livingly sane. But you also now have another view that you can make your own individual translation. You're not correcting, that just goes on, but now you can see it in two different ways. Next time, we're going to get into symbolic thinking. Yeah, you're a mama.